The show that goes there. This is the Shaggy Jenkins Show on the Pacifica Radio Network.
It's the Shaggy Jenkins Show on the Pacifica Radio Network. Welcome to it. Hey, if you are just checking out the show for the first time, where the hell have you been today? We have got a lot to cover, including Texas voter suppression, Russians really liking the aloha spirit of one candidate, and of course, a couple of other things that we just will throw in the mix because they matter. Before we get to all of that, hi, welcome to my show. I am, of course, the host, a critical thinker, a problem solver, a guy just left of normal and sane and always centered in common sense. My name is Shaggy Jenkins. You can find me at my website, shaggyjenkins.com, or wherever fine social media is searched for by Russian trolls. You can do that at Shaggy Live. This guy you can find, I think it's at West Tex for Landry, I think is your Twitter, right?
Landry for West TX.
There we go. I will one day actually know what I'm talking about on this show. Please welcome our Texas correspondent, who we're never sure if he's coming from the state or the country of Texas, Drew Landry.
All right. Thanks for having me on, Shaggy. Good to be back.
Yes, so I'm going to start off the show with one announcement and one announcement only. We will not be discussing any Super Bowl references.
Nope, none whatsoever.
None, because there's a lot of people because the game is so early in Hawaii, they started day drinking at 9 a.m. and they still don't know the outcome, so I'm not going to ruin it for them. But Drew, we do have to start today's show with a little bit of a story of people that I believe day drink very, very often, especially when they're crafting legislation. I'm, of course, bringing up your friends from Texas and this big voter purge. Okay, well, first off, let's just be honest. They're not Drew's friends, okay?
No, they're not.
Yeah, that was Shaggy being sarcastic, eh? Don't accuse him of being friends with these people, especially when you find out what they're doing. What are they doing, Drew?
Well, it's how you topped it off at the beginning of this. It's voter suppression. They're following an example that I think Florida did in that they found out that there's these non-citizens who have allegedly registered to vote and have voted in elections in Texas for the past 25 years or so. And then we're talking about 95,000 people who have registered to vote, and they, in 25 years, in some way, shape, or form, they've been able to vote. Now, if you are a Republican, one of the biggest things that you want to fight for here in Texas is what they call integrity in the ballot box. Is that, you want the actual citizens to, vote, and it's only them voting and no one's stealing it, and you don't, because all that stuff just favors those crazy Democrats. Well, the truth of the matter is that this is about as far from the truth.
Oh,
they trumpeted up the whole aspect of all these what they'll call illegals voting, but what has actually happened here is miscounting and the whole just scandal on their end of just being wrong, and so they're quietly dialing it back and going, well, we're doing our due diligence. We're trying to figure this out. And the whole truth of the matter is, well, they're just trying to scare people. And this is how you do it and whenever you're the party in power.
This is the thing that really gets me about this story, Drew, because how do I say this in a way that people in Texas will kind of, how do y'all say down there, savvy? How would somebody in Texas savvy the whole statement of when it comes to voter suppression, this is not y'all's first time at the rodeo?
No. No, but look, this is, there's this constant fear on their side, on the Texas Republican side, that there's this widespread, this rampant aspect of voter fraud. And in 2011, they passed a voter ID law that allowed 7 forms of identification to be allowed. And then that was sued, and they said, well, you can't do that. So, they said, well, how about we have you sign an affidavit? And, well, okay. And that's really been the law of the land since about 2013, 2015. So, look, these voter ID laws are nothing more than attempts to hurt poor people and minorities from going to vote. Because if you don't have an ID, which is obviously going to be a driver's license, that's more often than that's the most commonly used form of identification in the entire country, you have to go buy one. And you have to get there, and you have to wait in line, and then you have to spend about anywhere between $11 to $20 some odd dollars, if not more, to get an ID. So, this is about as much as a poll tax as it could ever be. But this is where we are in the state of Texas. If you're riding high, if you're in particular parts of the state and you're a Republican, and then this is what's keeping you in power. Yeah,
now because this is the funny thing. I don't want to bring up or just out you on the show without your permission, but I'm going to do it because it's my show, and at the end of the day, little stuff like this does amuse me. Drew, this is exactly kind of the reasons that you tried to run in Texas not too long ago either, was it?
Yeah, look, this is, for those who don't know, I actually ran for public office out here in West Texas, which is a pretty big Republican area, and I ran as a Democrat, and that's what I am. So, and one of the things that I ran on was the aspect of public education and trying to, improve that, and really trying to help as many people as I could in this particular race. And so you go from places to places, and you meet a whole bunch of people. You eat a whole bunch of food, which I'm, trying to lose all that particular weight still. But, look, but this is how things are. You just have to get out there and meet people, and you listen to them, and you go to all of these types of things. And one of the things that is incredibly popular is a thing called a Jamaica. It's spelled like Jamaica, but it's pronounced Jamaica. And that's the really what it is. It's like a fundraiser for the Catholic Church.
Oh, okay. Because for a second there, I thought it was a new strain of Willie Nelson product.
No, but it's a big party, fundraiser, festival for the Catholic Church that are predominantly Latino. And so you go into these areas, and so you would talk to them, and you get a real good grasp that you're running for something. And then they're going, they get kind of scared because I'm white, they're Latino. They think all types of stereotypes going on in their head. And I say, what can I do to help you? They said, how about you not, make me so fearful? I said, okay. So that's, there's a great gap here. And so that was one of the things that I was trying to really bridge was this particular thing. But, that's at the end of the day, that's, it didn't go my way, and here I am.
Yeah, you're like, yes, and now I'm on your show. Way to make me feel good, Drew. Way to make me feel good. It's like, here I was, Shaggy, full of hope and potential for a brave new tomorrow, and now I'm slumming it with you. But
totally not how I meant for that to go. Sorry about that. But
it's okay. It's okay. This is among many other reasons is why I no longer have a heart. Just a crusty little piece of coal that I've shoved in there to keep the hole from filling in. This is the thing, though. Even in my heartlessness, I would not, under any circumstances, be as cold, granite-hearted as Texas Republicans have been to minorities in Texas. Now, this latest little spat, I mean, Drew, we're talking about a disenfranchisement of 6 figures. I mean, this is like 100,000 plus people are disenfranchised by this new voter fraud kind of investigation. And This is one of the most interesting stories I found out about this. Drew, one of those people that was so concerned that she actually initiated the lawsuit that's going on. She was so concerned about losing her voter rights is a white woman from England. That part of the story killed me because, I mean, I'm used to, like, you know, back in the day, it was NAACP versus Stein. It was Abbott versus Vesey. You know, I mean, there was a clearly kind of a, this is something that is very obvious going into court. You guys did something bad. These guys are here to make you answer for it. But when you see a white woman walking into the courtroom going, I do believe they've suppressed me vote. It's like, I mean, I hate to be stereotypical here, but this is the problem, especially in Texas. It seems that the stories like this, because you guys have had like 14 or 15 stories about voter suppression that never really made the national headlines, which is mind-boggling.
I mean, this type of stuff happens, you know, on a monthly, if not yearly, annually basis here, because look, you know, they understand, they being the Texas Republicans, know that the demographics in Texas have been changing now for the past, you know, 5, 6, 7 years. And they know that if you get these changes in demographics, you get them to be citizens, you get them to register to vote, you push them to vote, they're not going to vote for Republicans. And that's just how the voting trend goes. And that's the reason that they're so scared. Well, we get all these Latinos and we get all these African Americans, more people out there to vote, they're going to vote for Democrats. And we can't let that happen. So we got to find ways to screw them out of all this stuff, because this is what it comes down to. It's really coming down to power. And the Texas Republicans have had every single state executive seat since 1998. And that was the first time ever in the history of Texas. So they want to hold on to that for another 4 years, for another 10 years, for another 20-some years. So this is the best thing that they can come up with, is try to scare people and make them fearful that, you know, there's this set of poor people just across the way who are trying to vote, and that means less power for you, and you and all your friends got to get out there and, you know, outvote them and all types of stuff. I mean, this is the kind of things that go on out here in their talk radio and all in their right-wing media, and it's incredibly frustrating to fight because people will buy it. And I'm just going to, because before we get to conservative talk media and your encounters with it this week, buddy, boy, Drew had a fun last week, ladies and gentlemen. But before we get to there, I kind of want to talk about this disenfranchisement of this latest Texas voter suppression kind of fraud investigation, because essentially what they're doing, and this is kind of the disturbing part about this act. The disturbing part is, at least to me, Drew, is a lot of these people that are on this list, if they're not on there multiple times to inflate the numbers. Remember how I think it was Houston had to get rid of 400 duplicate names on their voters' purge list? Oh, sure. By the way, the purge list is still in effect. Nobody has retracted it yet, and that's why there's a lawsuit going ahead against it. But on this list, Drew, the most disturbing thing is that they went and looked at records that showed people as not being citizens getting driver's license when, in fact, those people had gotten their driver's license, had gotten their state IDs and stuff ahead of their naturalization process, as is allowed by law. The Texas quote-unquote voter fraud investigation actually found American citizens. That's right. That's exactly right. Yeah. And, you know, if you look at the example that was done in Florida, you know, some time ago, you'll find out that, you know, it started out with this big number, shrunk, and then it got down to maybe 12 who are actually the problem. I think that's exactly what we're going to find here, is exactly what you just described, is that it'll get lower and lower and lower to where it'll be, maybe be, 15 people. And that's what they're going to spend all this resource on. All of these resources that they're going to spend of taxpayer dollars to really, bulk up this thing and really make it seem like they're doing something, when it comes down to they're not going to really do much of anything. I mean, the state of Texas has sued the federal government and brought up issues of voter fraud, I think more than any other state, and they haven't won many times at all. I mean, the current governor, Greg Abbott, was the attorney general. He sued over this several times, and I don't think he ever won any particular case with it. So, this is what we're dealing with here. But I do want to make mention that there is a purge list, and how this works is like this: if you're dead, if you're a convicted felon, if you've been deemed mentally incompetent, that is supposed to get you on the list, and then you're supposed to be taken off. Taking it further on something, as we have been discussing, is above and beyond any type of measurement of reasonable aspects. So, that's just kind of where we are. I mean, that's how this game plays. I don't always like to blame the refs whenever, to use a sports analogy, I don't like to always blame the refs when something goes wrong in a game. But when you're in power and you have influence over how a game plays, you're the one to blame in this. And what I'm pointing to is the Texas Republican Party. It's these elected officials who are in the Republican Party who are just trying their best to hold on to as much power as they can. And
it's kind of like when Bill Belichick had people recording other games and practices so that he could go back and then use their playbooks against them. I happen to remember some stuff about sports ball. I thought we were going to talk about sports, but I mean, come on. This is the thing. This is another example of, dare I say, Texas, once again, Texas Republicans specifically, fumbling a chance at making some sort of meaningful legislation. Instead, they're kind of chasing one of their pet concerns. And I mean, Drew, since the early 2000s, you guys have had, I cannot remember her name, but she was a state senator. She used to come on TV petting her dog and talking about, I just want to make sure Texas voters are really Texas citizens. And that's why I'm supporting the Voter ID Act. I cannot remember her name, but I think she shot JR.
Oh my gosh.
I don't know.
I think we
but
just lost half of our audience and viewership when you mentioned Dallas there. We go, what? That's a TV show? What?
You don't know Dallas?
No, I do. I don't think our viewership does.
If they don't, what is wrong with you? You don't know Dallas? Dallas ruled the 80s.
Let me Google that. Let me put that in the interwebs.
Yes. Yeah. Dallas was the show that broke up Charles and Diana. Look that up. You will be surprised. Charles and Diana fought over who shot JR, and it led to him having the affair with... Just throwing that out there. A little random bit of history. The thing is, though, it's like, as long as we're looking back through the history of Texas voter suppression acts and at the frequency they're coming up, here lately, the Texas GOP lawmakers seem to be amping up their attacks on minority communities. Now, with this latest investigation, the allegations were of, I think, 138,000 plus people, and most of those, like 95% of them, were specifically of Latin descent. So, here's the thing. Drew, you live in a very rural part of Texas, a very, dare I say, pasty white part of Texas. Exactly why do these people, to this day, feel infringed upon when the original owners of your territory happen to migrate back as all species do, biologically speaking?
Well, I
love giving you the easy questions, Drew.
Yeah, it all comes down to fear. It all comes down to just wanting power. That's what this whole thing boils down to. You can go. You can look at some of the smaller counties in West Texas, and you will find that 75%, 60%, even 55% of those who live there are Latino. And the problem that is having is trying to get them to trust the system to want to participate in the whole process of electing people. And with this type of shenanigans and chicanery that's taking place here at the executive branch level of the state, I don't blame them, for not wanting to get involved and not really wanting to do this, because they feel like, well, if I try to go vote, they're probably going to try to arrest me or something, because they're not going to think that I'm, really here, or that I'm somebody else, or, this is the kind of, thinking that we can probably find. It's really sad, because, if they being the Texas Republicans who are in power have this kind of idea of inclusion, which they always like to talk about. Well, we are a big tent party, which you're not, but that's okay. Then they would try to be as welcoming as they can when it comes to this particular issue. But, they're really trying to stroke fear. And right now it's been a useful tactic.
The thing is the only tents they seem to be pitching is tents in their pants that they pitch every time that they get one of these acts passed. And this time, this kind of goes deep. We're talking about your governor. I think your, what is it, your secretary? Your state secretary?
Yeah, Secretary of State, yeah.
Secretary of State. These are not like, the clerk at the DMV type government jobs. We're talking at the highest level of Texas government. These guys have been actively, dare I say, bragging this whole week about their ability to push this fraudulent voter fraud report, or AKA the Purge list. Here's the thing. If you're in a state like Texas and the highest leader is showing signs of being just a little bit, what does the alt-right call racism and stupid? Oh, yeah. Racially conscious, as the governor of Texas is being, what do you feel as a citizen?
You should feel outraged, but only if you're in the same race as him. Should you feel okay. And if you have no conscience whatsoever, then you're like, yeah, well, it doesn't apply to me. But if you have any care about your common people, this is an outrage. And it has to be fought, and what you're going to find out here is this isn't a real thing. When it does get found out in something like that, they're going to dial it back. They're going to, not really say a whole lot about it. They're going to downplay the whole thing. If you caught a press conference, which I'm sure everybody watches what Texas does, because we Texans, we feel like that we have the attention of the world now.
Yeah.
And
I'm just going to say this from Hawaii. Who? But do go on.
But there was a press conference, and dealing with a big bill that was coming out about property tax reform, and that's about as boring as all get out. So I'll spare you some of that. But he was asked a question, the Texas governor, about the new findings, and saying, well, you're finding out that your original numbers and all this stuff is not true. How do you what's your take on it? And he goes, well, look, we're all going to do our due diligence, and we'll find something out at the end of the day. And it's not, let's not get too hyped up about it. Whenever this first came out, he and his office were spiking the football. Another reference there. So, they were, yeah, this is what we got to do. And then they're like, well, look, let's just wait it out. Okay, let's just wait it out. It's okay.
I didn't know that they were a lot like Matt McConaughey. Just like, hey, yeah, man.
Well, he is from Texas.
Oh, that explains a lot. You guys got Matt McConaughey. We've got Jason Momoa. Once again, Hawaii asked Texas, who? But and I say that too because coming up at the second part of the show, there is a story out of Hawaii that has national impact that really doesn't have enough coverage going on about it, but because I'm here, I figure we'll spread the fear about it. But Drew, final thoughts on this whole Texas thing. How often do you see the federal government coming in, especially with the situation in Washington right now, how often do you see the federal government coming in and trying to correct Texas and this voter fraud and, well, fraudulent voter fraud investigation? You
might be surprised by this, and I don't know if anyone will be surprised by this, but this happens a lot. There was always an instance with redistricting and the aspects of gerrymandering. The U.S. Department of Justice told Texas, you got to redraw your maps because they're too harmful to minorities, and you're hurting their ability for one person, one vote standard, and that's a whole other bag of chips. We won't even go there.
Yeah. We've got to take a quick break, and when we come back, there's a whole bag of nuclear chips we've got to open up. It's the Shaggy Jenkins Show.
Opiates has taken everything and everyone I've ever loved away from me. Everything. All I did was dance. I was being scouted for a scholarship.
I blew my ankle out and I got prescribed pain pills by my doctor.
If making my detox public is gonna help somebody, I'm all for it.
Is there any medicine that I can have right now? I'm cold sweating really bad.
I just wish I would have had a warning.
Opioid dependence can happen after just 5 days. Know the truth, spread the truth.
More news, less alternative facts. It's the Shaggy Jenkins Show on the Pacifica Radio Network.
It's the Shaggy Jenkins Show on the Pacifica Radio Network. Welcome back. If you missed anything during the break, what are you thinking? Get onto our website at shaggyjenkins.com and catch up on the show that you may have missed. You can subscribe to us on multiple different platforms, so there is that whole thing. Just look for the Shaggy Jenkins Show wherever fine media is served, or check us out on some fine radio stations across the U.S. You can also follow me on social media at Shaggy Live. This guy, though, you will have to go deep in the heart of Texas to find. His name is, and he is an educator, former politician himself, and recovering Democrat. It is Drew Landry.
Good to be back. Thanks.
Yeah, and the only reason I say recovering Democrat is before we get into our story of how Putin and Trump are edging the world ever so closely towards nuclear brinkmanship, I instead would like to bring up this weird little, how do I say this, Drew? Things have been getting kind of strange out in the Midwest with this weather. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, that's one way to put it.
Yeah, so, I mean, whether or not you are cold, or if you're like in Hawaii where we're wondering, what are these temperatures below 75 degrees doing here? One of the things that we can agree on is as far as kind of a news cycle-y week, Donald Trump has kicked the bull in the wrong end before he went to ride, wouldn't you say?
That's one of the better analogies. Yeah.
Yeah, because, I mean, I'm just going to throw this out there before we talk about Putin. Trump this week decided that he wanted to start this whole new game of brinksmanship by saying, our nuclear treaties really are just stupid, so we shouldn't even follow them anymore. And this is the thing. Why didn't people panic more, Drew?
we really should, to be honest, but that's a great question. But here we go. I mean, this is another thing that the president has decided to say. Not gonna do this anymore. Don't like it. Okay, all right, not cool. So this is it. I mean, my thought process, and this is the only thing that makes sense about this entire thing, is he's being hammered for this collusion with Russia and the 2016 election, and how he's been soft on Russia, and now he's saying, you know what, I'm going to act tough. I'm going to get out of this treaty, and I'm going to show people I'm going to be tough on them, and so that's what we're going to do.
Yeah.
No more treaty, no more being nice. We're going to be tough and all that stuff. And okay. Well,
yeah, but there's the other side of the equation. See, this over the weekend, Putin basically came out and says, yeah, this is very good for Russia right now, Comrade Trump. I mean, President Trump. He's no comrade of mine, Drew Landry. You understand? I just talking in perestroika kind of terms. But
yeah, of course.
Yes. But Donald Trump, he is bit of idiot. So Russia is going to escalate and build more superior nuclear weapon than America has. That was literally, well, that wasn't literally what he says, because I can't do Vladimir Putin. I sound more like Yakov Smirnoff, let's just be honest. But Gorky Park era references aside, when we talk about Putin, he legitimately did come out and say, no treaty with America, no need to not develop powerful nuclear weapons.
Yeah, and that's the scary thing. I mean, but look, he don't care. The president is just in his own thing. This is an old thing, and we don't need it anymore. So I don't want to be in a treaty. And yeah, that's it. And people say I'm soft on Russia. I'm going to act like that I'm not soft on Russia, and I'm just going to not just do this. This is stupid. Don't like it.
Wait a minute. Because if we're going to do the whole Donald Trump thing of quote-unquote soft on Russia, okay, so everybody accused the president of being soft on the whole Middle East situation, so he says, you know what, I'm just going to pull out of Syria, much to the benefactee, I should say, being Russia, much to the world's chagrin. Of course, the United States started pulling out troops as of last week, and guess what happened? Of course, Russians started moving in more troops, which is not what the world wanted. Okay, so Putin has already got that soft victory from Trump, and Trump did that along the lines of, I'm going to play hard in my diplomatic approach. Now with this, him saying, I'm going to play hard in my diplomatic approach, I'm going to be like pull the deal right off the table, just like I did with Stormy Daniels and Karen McDougal by not signing those NDAs. Yeah.
I really hope that Stormy is at my State of the Unions, and her and I will have a union later that evening. Very Art of the Deal-esque. Hope that'll happen.
Yeah. But states of insanity aside, Donald Trump, once again, is trying to sell something to the American people as being tough, when instead it has directly played into not only the agenda of, but to the benefit of Vladimir Putin.
Yeah, you're exactly right. And this is another little softball he's just throwing up to him. And, trying to play the whole psyche game, I'm trying to think, what could the U.S. do now that we're not in this treaty? Possibly make more nuclear weapons. This could lead to a bigger arms race. I'm trying to wrap my head around it, and those are the only two things that's coming to my head, is trying to act tough, build more nuclear weapons, and that's all I'm thinking of. I mean, he's big on this America First thing. Renegotiated the whole NAFTA thing, NAFTA deal, putting a whole lot of tariffs on Chinese trade and our exports with China. Put more tariffs upon Canadian things, and so trying to build this wall. And now he's out of this treaty with Russia dealing with nuclear weapons. This is just, that's the only thing that I can think of that this is that he's doing here. From a diplomatic standpoint and a America First thing, you would want a treaty with the second most. I'm sorry. You would want a treaty with the country that has the second most nuclear weapons in the world. That just makes common sense. And so
it does
he doesn't.
A little common sensey, doesn't it?
But he's off on another little, ordeal that he wants to go on.
Yeah, I mean, because I used to watch this show, and I'm going to, oh God, probably embarrassing myself. I mean, Donald Trump is a lot like Mintock, the Mind Taker from Harvey Birdman, Attorney at Law.
Okay.
He does something that is so blatantly obvious to anybody in the room, and then he goes, "Ooh, a mind taker." It's like, look at my power. And that's kind of what he's done with this latest thing, at least with Vladimir Putin. Now, remember, Vladimir Putin has not only had allegations in the United States with electioneering and things like that, using things like the Internet Research Agency and other such entities to push forward cyber attacks during our elections. He did that during the Brexit vote. He did that during Denmark's vote, during France's vote. I mean, like, in election after election after election around the world, Russians have tried to spread some sort or execute some sort of influence through either digital realm or propaganda realm or just soft money pumped into certain candidacies. And
right.
When it comes to Donald Trump, every act he takes that he says is tough on Russia to his base turns out, in fact, to be soft on Russia, and Russia benefits from these acts. So this is the thing that I got to ask you. Does the president, through just the virtues of these latest actions, with now once again throwing us closer and closer to nuclear brinkmanship with a superpower, has the president once again behaved like a Russian asset?
Seems like it. That's if you're any kind of investigator thinking this through, this is another little piece of the puzzle. This is another little drip, drip, drip. It really appears that way, but that's not going to turn anything or turn the dial on any of his big supporters, for any of those things. But when you look at objective details and facts, that's what they're called. This is a big tilt to the fact that he's doing something here with Russia, and Mueller's going to figure this out. And everything that has happened here is another little tip to the hat to the Mueller investigation.
This is the thing, because as long as we're going to talk about that, a lot of people always approach this story from the United States side, from the what did Trump and Trump's associates and sycophants actually do? But this is the thing that I kind of want to bring up right now, just between me and you. I want to talk about Putin and what is on his mind in as far as his agenda. Now, given the fact that Russia always kind of, in some way or shape or form, tries to cater to either politicians or policies and public support for those politicians or policies that benefit Russia and specifically Vladimir Putin. with his selection of people like Donald Trump and with his kind of support of let's go ahead and be honest here, because you probably have seen this on Netflix. There's a new documentary called Alt-Right, and if you haven't watched it, it gives you a very scary look into one Richard Spencer's life. You'll know him as the guy that coined the term alt-right. Now, the reason I said I want to look at this from Putin's perspective is because on that documentary, Richard Spencer is getting ready to record a broadcast about the whole Syria situation. And on his whiteboard, and he's joking to the camera, nobody can read that except me. Nobody can read that except me, which is probably a good thing. Wrong. I can read that.
Yeah.
And one of the things that was on his whiteboard is Putin as a problem solver for Syria misrepresented in mainstream media. So, white supremacist and ardent, supporters of Donald Trump are kind of in this weird world where they found themselves politically aligned and even very defensive of Vladimir Putin.
Yeah.
So when we talk about his kind of what does he have to gain, we're talking about a foreign president that just through not only the actions of the United States president, but a lot of people up under him and known in social circles and provocateurs and stuff are all finding themselves aligned very nicely with his policies. So Putin really has to be enjoying all of this attention right now, wouldn't you think?
Anything that's going to benefit him, yeah. And whenever you have supporters of the president who say and wear T-shirts and have signs that I'd rather be Russian than a Democrat, that's problematic for our country. That they would rather be in lockstep with a country that we were in a Cold War with from 1945 to 1991, and dealing with presidents of different parties who talked tough, who talked nice, who did diplomatic relations. This is, for them to be on that side, for them to say, I don't really care. It's okay. I'd rather be Russian than a Democrat. This type of mentality is so incredibly, I'm going to try and put this nicely, odd. And I say that because I don't want to say unpatriotic. I don't want to say that because maybe in their own sense they do feel like there is some patriotism there. But it's really difficult for someone with the objective eye to really call that patriotism as it is partyism and being a sycophant. This is what we're dealing with. It's a new set of supporters who really believe that the president can do no wrong. And until there's hard evidence done by an investigation, as we're seeing being played out, and that will make the case and say, this is what happened. Here's where all these dots are connected. They go from here to here. Here's where the entire timeline is. And try to dispute it, fight it.
Yeah.
And right now, it takes time for that. And so they're upset at how long it's taking and all this stuff. And they didn't care two licks how many investigations were done to Hillary Clinton over Benghazi or her emails, or how long it took Ken Starr to investigate Bill Clinton over Whitewater and then Monica Lewinsky. That stuff took longer and had zero indictments. And nobody went to jail over those things. Yet we are seeing people in this Mueller investigation be indicted, going to jail, making plea agreements, doing all of these things. And yet these facts that are taking place are not convincing people who are diehard in the wool supporters of the president. And I think that's a problem.
This is the thing, is because I think also that people forget that it's not just Republicans and Russians. because this is one of the most interesting stories I found over the weekend, and it came out statewide here. It was all that everybody talked about in Hawaii because we all got onto our social media and tried to see if in fact it was true.
Yeah.
As much as people connect the Russians' actions to Donald Trump specifically, and through him by and large to the Republicans, over the weekend, investigators and cybersecurity officials have came out with a very scary kind of assessment of Russia's interest in Tulsi Gabbard. Now, you'll remember on Saturday, Tulsi Gabbard from Hawaii announced that she will be running for president in 2020. Now, I'm going to go ahead and say that as a person that, lives here in the state, Tulsi Gabbard is very popular among some circles, and in other circles, not so much. It's just kind of like a normal political fact.
Yeah.
But, Drew, when we talk about Tulsi Gabbard and her portrayal online and in stories, we're finding a pattern time and time again, and I'm going to ask, does this surprise you? Of Russia now trying to drum up support and animosity at the same time against her.
Yeah, I not surprised. Not surprised at all. I think there's they know that Trump could beat in 2020. And if you prop up somebody and you get all the people to attack this person, and then that means people will support, her side will then support her in all these defenses that they're making on the other side, then you've propped up a congressperson to challenge a president. And this is I think this is exactly what the Russians want. They want to prop up Congresswoman Gabbard and say, look, you can't beat Trump, so we're going to make you and give you all the support for the Democratic Party nomination so that Trump can have another 4 years. I think that's the strategy.
This is the thing about that strategy, because, they are not selective at all. As much as the mainstream media concentrates on Russia specifically and their online shenanigans, specifically again with the Republicans and specifically Donald Trump, that's a niche of a niche of a niche, by the way. As much as the mainstream media concentrates on that niche of a niche of a niche, we also have to understand that when the findings from the intelligence community came out it was 2017, and then in the summer of 2018, they released an even bigger report. What was actually discussed in there, and what nobody really wanted to talk about in at length about, was that it wasn't just one political party or political ideology that these campaigns are behind. It's personalities, but the Russians are kind of ingenious in the fact that, Drew, they drum up simultaneously support and dissent against these candidates with these campaigns. Ultimately, what are their goals if they're both cheerleading and denigrating?
Yeah, to divide. That's what, to divide and conquer. I mean, we saw, again, going back to Congresswoman Gabbard and the support and the shade that they're throwing onto the Bernie Sanders people and on Joe Biden, and all of these types of things that's being thrown at them is done by Russian bots, by the country of Russia. That's because their plan is to bring up one candidate and take down the other primary candidates to support a bigger candidate. Now, this sounds really odd in the way that I just explained that, but it's about dividing the Democrats, keep the Republicans as united as they can, unless they're going to get mess with and be anti-Trump, which we know they didn't in 2016, but who knows? But unless they start doing that, they're going to be trying to mess with the Democrats, trying to divide them, make them sore about this election, ruin their enthusiasm, and they won't show up to vote in 2020.
The thing is, though, is that the Russians have been guilty in the past of being very anti-Trump with their propaganda campaigns, but doing it in such a way that it elicits sympathy and even more strenuous support from his already diminishing base. In other words, they've figured out how to marginalize a very small sect of our population and radicalize it without ever having to hold a meeting, without ever having to assemble in a public place, and without ever having to have a centralized leadership spitting out a centralized doctrine. Now, as far as propaganda, you got to say that end results in that kind of a campaign with what Russia has actually accomplished would be, oh my God, break out the borscht and vodka, we celebrate.
They're very good at it. There's no question. I mean, they are really good at this because they've been doing it for however long. That's just, I don't have really much more to add other than how good they are at this, because we see how effective they were in 2016. There were some talks about how they were getting involved in the midterms, but we're going to see them really come full force, everything that they have again in 2020. And I think that's what we're going to see in all networks to try to get people to really be divided, and that's their goal.
Well, keep in mind that some of these sites that are controlled by Russian media have already kind of taken to writing these highly, highly supportive, opinionated pieces on Tulsi Gabbard, and specifically having to do with her Syrian policy. Now, as long as we're going to talk about things that put people on the map, the one thing that put Tulsi Gabbard on the map was not too long ago. She said that we have no idea what we're doing in the Middle East. The United States is engaged in endless wars, and it's time that somebody goes in and talks to Bashar Assad. And she did it and called it a fact-finding mission. Problem: Assad is known by the intelligence community to be an enemy of the interests of the United States and to be, dare I say, one of those scary dictator types that history has kind of shown us aren't really good people. So,
right.
Now, this is the thing. Russia is saying that because she took that trip, people are going to denigrate her, when instead they should be, get this, celebrating her go out of the box thinking of truth finding and of championing true people's causes. Do those sound like the exact same rhetorical points that Russia tried to make about Donald Trump?
Oh, yeah. It's incredibly similar here. But, to Congresswoman Gabbard's credit, she is a war veteran. And for her to have the perspective of endless wars, you can kind of understand where she's coming from. But I think that plays right into the Russian troll's mind. And their entire play is that, well, we're not really, saying anything that any kind of veteran wouldn't say, and we're just going to amplify it. And that's, with Russia Today and the Sputnik News and all of these. I mean, these are Russian-ran media outlets. There's just no question about it. I mean, we don't have a news network called U.S. Now, and if we do, I don't know where it is. So excuse me if it really does exist. But whatever. Maybe you can at me.
It doesn't exist. It doesn't exist.
We don't have a state-ran propaganda machine. Okay, not in this century. But let's understand the fact that Russia does. They're trying to come off as credible media outlets, and this is what they're doing. They're propping her up because she wants to, say that no one knows what we're doing in the Middle East, and well, she would know because she's a veteran. Now that's a brave thing. I'm not gonna. That's a whole other trail that that we can go down another time. And her opinion on that is incredibly valid, but they're using her. And I don't know if she knows that. Someone has to tell her and point this out to her. So.
Yeah. And unfortunately, it can't be me and you because that's the show for today. Drew, where can people find you online?
You can find me on Facebook, Drew Landry. Type me in there. You can find me on Twitter at Landry for West TX. You can find me on Instagram at Landry for West TX. I'm even on Snapchat. I walk my dog and I take little 10-second videos of that. Yeah.
And until next time, you can find me hiding under a rock. Love you, mean it. Gate in by. We are out.